All right, everyone. Today on Political Stunts Sure to Backfire, John Kasich is actually going to go to the Democratic get-together when they coronate Joe Biden and endorse him. John Kasich, now you remember him as the fifth wheel candidate in 2016 for the Republican nomination. And there were some people, it's funny, as I recall this, I analyzed at the time. Some people, like the Kasich centrist core fans, are like, well, Kasich performs the best in matchups against Hillary. He's the only one who can win, which obviously was false. I think any of the Republican candidates in retrospect would have beaten her, including Kasich. I would agree. That's because no one knew who he was. And so if you're comparing person I don't know anything about with person who wants to blow up the world and raise my taxes, yeah, I'm probably going to go with the hungry candidate. And it was funny because, like, the biggest thing about his whole campaign was a meme, basically, about him eating obnoxiously. About how he'd be talking to a reporter, and he'd be sitting there scarfing down a sub sandwich or greasy pizza or slurping soup, and he sits there, like, he takes great big fucking mouthfuls of his food and just, like, obnoxiously talks through the food and stuff. Like, he has no table manners at all. I'm trying to think. If John Kasich had won, if he had become president, we'd probably be facing an international crisis, the same as when Herbert Walker puked all over the Japanese prime minister because he got some bad sushi and sake that time. You remember that? And it was a big incident. At first, people thought the president of the United States had been poisoned. People were worried he was dead. It was an international crisis for a few hours, and nobody even remembers that it happened for the most part. You should definitely look at that up. I think there's footage of it, if I remember correctly. I think there's a video of Herbert Walker sort of leaning over and puking all over him, and the prime minister's like, you know, what the fuck is going on? It must have been foul, too, because sushi and sake and some of these other things, churning back up out of what was he, 60-year-old man at the time, it would have been a little bit of a problem. At least his son only, tried to choke himself on that pretzel. That was another funny one. The Bushes have eating problems, and Kasich does too. But I'm trying to think of the optics of this. So a Republican who was seen as sort of centristic, but by Democratic Party standards at this point, with the woke left, with the uber wokers, John Kasich is considered a step from fascism at this point, and Biden to them is unpalatable. Think about how great it's going to be when John Kasich gives a rambling, boring message reiterating exactly what the Democrats say every day anyway, which is Orange Man bad. Because he doesn't have any other reason to endorse Biden. And fundamentally, I know why he's doing this. He's doing this to set the stage. He thinks that Biden will win, and Biden will immediately look for ways to heal the nation, be conciliatory. Kasich is a nice, safe, centrist individual without hardline partisan ties, reasonably popular governor of Ohio, an important state, and he's hoping that he can get a cabinet position. Secretary of State John Kasich, Attorney General John Kasich, something like that. That's what he's hoping for. It's opportunism. He's doing this to advance his career, and by the way, he's young enough so he does have a career left. The problem is, by doing this, if Trump wins, which I think he will, his career's over. He just fucked himself out of the same party. He'll have to switch parties. He would literally have to switch parties, abandon the Republicans. By the way, you have seen things like this. Amash abandoned the Republicans. Amash abandoned them. And did he become an LP or did he become independent? I can't remember. Mainly because nobody gives a fucking shit. He'll be out of politics soon too. But John Kasich is just a boring neocon. It's opportunism. It makes for a funny story, though. I'm thinking, the buffet at the Democratic convention, they better watch out and make sure that there aren't too many cameras around, or else they'll have a hot mic moment of John Kasich mushing his way through porridge or something like that. I'm sure it'll be all vegan, too. By the way, some vegan foods are good. There's this, like, at the Jumbo nearby, and this is just a ramble, because this is a funny video, so it doesn't make as much of a difference if I ramble a little bit. Actually, there's this thing with vegan snacks. It's like samosa and falafel and stuff like that. It's actually pretty good. I think those are usually vegan to begin with, though. So don't worry, I'm not becoming a fucking hippie or anything. I'm not prepping to vote for Bernie Sanders and take out my love beads. This is great. John Kasich. The optics of it won't be good, though. I think ultimately it's a loss for Biden. Being seen with a Republican at this point, almost is a necessarily bad thing for a Democratic candidate. And there's such a hyper-partisan strain between the two parties, number one, and these ideologies, number two, roughly delineated by the parties. I just don't see how this helps. I mean, Biden doesn't have any problem with centrist voters. His problem is he can lose them. So Kasich doesn't really mean anything. His problem is extremely low enthusiasm among especially the under 30 far left voting demographic. Those are the people that they may not show up at the polls, but they do knock on doors and get other people signed up. They're the ones that do the footwork. They're the activists. They're the ones that know social media. Biden has huge problems with this. Problems that Trump, by the way, doesn't have with the sort of young Republican side of things that became, over the last few years, much more tech literate. Initially, the Evangelo-Con Republicans were sort of seen as a creeping dinosaur, a troglodyte, and the Democrats were sort of hip to the lingo of the cyber, of the interwebs. Obama is fairly adept at it at the time. It's totally different now. It's a 180. Again, the political paradigm has shifted considerably, and the optics of John Kasich, of all people, being up on the stage with Joe Biden, I don't think it's going to look good. I don't think it's going to go well for him. I know that Kasich's doing it for opportunistic reasons. I'm sure Biden has a particular strategic reason for wanting to do this too, instead of just saying, well, I like my friend John Kasich, but this is a Democratic convention. I'm sure there's a reason. I just think it's a blunder, which would fit in with everything else that Biden does, so I wouldn't be surprised. That's about all. Peace out.